Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Outfilm City. And today we're going to present the Lesbian short program. And today here with me is Jenna Laurenzo. I'm Marina Yurieva. I'm the Vice President of Outfilm City. Jenna is the filmmaker um, of the Girl Night Stand Chapter 2 and the lead actress as well. Hi, Jenna.
Hi.
So excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining. And we love the film. Can you please tell us in a few words, describe it? What does it mean for you? And I know that was very popular, the first part of that a few years ago, and just talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you so much for having me and including the film in your festival. Uh, well, the first Girl Night Stand, I really wanted to return to those two characters, but it wasn't really until COVID hit that I was sparked by this inspiration, largely because of the idea of masks and connection, and people were all walking around with masks, and I was thinking about these two characters and what it would be like to reconnect over a period of time and how willing they would be to drop their masks, both literally and figuratively. There's emotional risk and like a real health risk. And having this bottled, nervous energy of COVID and being in isolation for so long, and these two characters sort of exploding together. And that is really what sparked my curiosity to dive back into this storyline. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and it looks like so they just had one night stand years ago, and she's just randomly calling her, right?
in my head, they had a relationship that ended, likely because my character freaked out, and then regretting that I freaked out, and then having to sort of get past that. Because in terms of character growth and development, in the first one, Sarah really takes the initiative. In this one, I wanted my character to take initiative. And it was also important to try to create something during this time that felt hopeful and optimistic, that could also stand on its own as a short, as we were discussing before the interview. But I also wanted something that could connect to this storyline that I had made prior and make something truly for the audience that supported it, and helped me get my feature film made.
Right. So that's what I wanted to ask you. Who is your audience? It became so widely popular. You got 16 million views with the first video, first film on YouTube. So how did it become so popular? And what do you think?
I think that's a big question everybody's always asking, is how do you make something go viral? And it's sort of it's hard to predict, but I think the best thing you can do is put something out that feels really honest and authentic, and anchored in something, anchored in something, I want to say in my heart, but that sounds so cheesy, but that's all I can think of. Something that really felt, it was anchored into something that made me feel uncomfortable, and I think through that discomfort, people connected to that. There's a universality within that discomfort, and I think that helped many people connect with it. And but in terms of why so many people watched it, I don't know. I'm grateful for it though. But a big part of it was the audience engagement and audience sharing on multiple platforms. And so I can't take credit for that. I can only thank everyone for sharing it.
But it's also that feeling everybody gets from it. It's very awkward. It's you made it so awkward, both of them.
Yeah.
And maybe could it be that, or is it the story itself that it's discovery, self-discovery, and in the second film, she became more, I guess, aware of herself, but still very awkward.
Yeah, I
Right?
think that like, yeah, there's something for me that I really like is how do you take that discomfort and move through it in a very uh, visceral way? Because you know, it's, you don't want to push it too hard, but I like watching people sort of work through it and being forced to work through it. I think sometimes in movies we see these characters that are just like so self-assured and confident and but like I kind of like seeing somebody have to swim through the discomfort and to get what they want and I think emotionally sometimes that's the most challenging because that's when there is a lot of vulnerability and it feels so uncomfortable because no one wants to be rejected or have their heart broken or all the stuff that comes with that. So that seems like a fun when it comes to love. I like that playground for discomfort and having to get past that.
Right. And so is it all your personal story, or how much of it is your personal story? Because you also made a feature film, Lesbian, which is also very popular, and that looks like your personal story, right?
Yeah.
Which one is more?
Yeah, Lesbian is definitely more personal. Girl Night Stand is like I think that Girl Night Stand is well, I mean Girl Night Stand is for sure personal because all of those feelings are very real. I think I hope that I hit it a little bit better in real life. I would like to think that I wasn't so you know, but I'm sure that there's many people who'd be like, nope, that's fine. um, but it was just more of a physical manifestation of all the anxieties that I ever felt. And I think that's why I had so much fun with it because it's like, well, what do you do with all this energy? That all the energy has to go somewhere. And so with Girl Night Stand, it was like this place that I could just put all of that in.
Right, that makes sense. Thank you. And how was it shooting during COVID? Your film is about the COVID time.
Yeah.
Also, shooting probably was very difficult, right?
Well, yeah, we just kept it down to a very like skeleton crew, minimal people, like very few people, and everyone had to get tested, and we just were really sticklers about following the safety protocol, and it just, you know, filming is always a challenge for sure, and there's always hiccups. And now with COVID, there's just more. There's just like another part of the whole production that needs to be taken into account and consideration, and like careful consideration, because you're talking about people's health and safety. And so, yeah, it was just like another thing that had to be considered and figured out.
Right. And I also read the comments to both of them, and everybody's very excited about the films and very grateful that you made them. And you had lots of questions about the next chapters. So can you talk about that? I know that you're gonna make a series now.
Yeah, hopefully that's the plan. You know, these things take forever to develop, but I am developing it for as like a TV project now. So we're fleshing it out, and I have a script, and it'll be this uphill climb, but I have optimism, And, you know, you just sort of have to figure these things out as you go. But the audience enthusiasm is always really encouraging, especially in those moments when you're like, oh, how will this ever come together? But yeah, that's sort of what gives fuel to that energy to continue to push forward, because you want to make things for the people who have always shown up and been enthusiastic about the content myself and the team I continuously work with are trying to create.
Can you tell about the characters? Will there still be two of them, or it will mostly um, follow the main character?
Yeah, so right now, as I have it, it would be the two characters, but it would be built out into an ensemble as well. And it would be also a comedy, a little darker. And that's what I have so far, other than like reading the script.
Wow, that's so exciting. That's so great. And thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for your film, and please let us know about the series. We are excited to see it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Lesbian Shorts Q&A program. So here with me is Teresa Garratty, the filmmaker of What If. Hi, Teresa.
Hello.
It's nice to meet you. So the first question would be, could you please describe your film in your own words? What message did you want to convey?
Ooh, okay. So the film's called What If, and it is about a girl who's just sort of come out of a really messy breakup, and she's kind of ready-ish to start again, she thinks, but she's not quite sure. So she needs like a lot of encouragement from her housemate to kind of like find like her own sort of self-confidence again. So yeah, it's kind of it's about like sort of like starting again after you've like had a bit of a bad time, and sort of trying to find hope where there isn't any. So yeah.
Okay, and is it your personal story? And if it is, how much is it your personal story?
In a way, yeah, like some of it is based on like my own personal experiences. I mean, I guess like because the film kind of deals with what can be seen as like an abusive relationship, but not in terms of physical abuse, but more about like the emotional kind of side of things. So like, I guess like I would say like I have had experience of that in the past, which I did use to kind of like inspire the story. But as far as what actually happens in the film, that hasn't happened to me. But it's yeah, I've just kind of like I've used my own sort of past experiences to like help the story along.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. So your film is also about dating in the time of COVID, and how did COVID affect you personally? And can you please tell us about the shooting during the pandemic? How did that work?
Okay, yeah. So I mean, yeah, lockdown was really hard in the UK. Like, well, I think we went through about 3 in the end, and we made this film in between I think it was the first and second lockdown. We managed to make this like just in between. But of course, we still had like quite a few rules to follow. Like, we weren't allowed to have actors or crews sort of standing too close to each other. Everyone had to be masked up. Everything had to be clean all the time. And so when I wrote the script with all of that in mind, And yeah, it was really hard to kind of think of big open locations, or think of ways that we can have the actors standing apart, or think of ways that we can maybe like cheat the shot and maybe have one actor stand in and take them out and then cut the other one in later. So yeah, like it made sort of like double the workload really.
Okay, and how long did it take to shoot it?
The shoot itself was just 3 days in total. Well, more like 2.5.
Wow.
Yeah, and the whole production happened really quickly because I did have another script commissioned before COVID hit us, but then of course that had like a lot of like physical contact in it, and that a lot of people being in the same space. So that whole idea had to be shelved, and I had to very quickly come up with a new concept and write the script. And I think we were only in pre-production for about 2 weeks, so that was like everything, like script writing, casting, finding crew, finding the location, trying to have a little rehearsal over Zoom as well. So yeah, it all happened really quickly.
Wow, that's super fast.
Yeah.
So, in your film, Jess mentions the deaf world in kind of negative way, and can you please describe why that would be?
Yeah.
And
Okay. So
how is it?
yeah. So like I think that is just like me trying to be more realistic, because I think a lot of the times when you see deafness and disability on screen, like it's kind of sugar coated, and the deaf and disabled people are all like usually like the nice people and like the warm welcoming people. But I mean, it's a community, and in any community you're going to have like some bad apples and some like negative experiences. So yeah, it was just kind of like a way of like showing that there's sort of like two sides to the deaf community as well. So
Okay. And can you tell us how the queer world is different from the deaf queer world? Do they overlap at all, or they're completely separate?
right, yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, in a way that they're different, because when you're deaf and queer, you're in a double minority. So the circle is even smaller than it usually would be with just the queer community. So like we have like our own sort of like deaf pre-pride parties and stuff, because
Really?
there's not I mean, it's better than it was, but there's usually not that much sort of inclusivity or access at like in queer spaces or at Pride. It's like, so the deaf queer community like to have their own sort of like little space where they can just like be themselves and stuff. But they're similar in the fact that I feel like they're more like both queer and deaf queer people were more like open-minded, and sort of like make the effort to sort of like look after like our own fellow queer people and deaf queer people, and that we all like enjoy the same thing. We want to be involved in Pride and like celebrating Pride and stuff. So we're similar in that way.
Okay. So I have another question. What about dating? Do deaf people date hearing people, or it usually doesn't happen?
Oh, at the dating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens. Yeah, it's like a bit of a mix. So like it can be quite common that a deaf, especially a deaf sign language user, will only want to date a deaf sign language user, because you have that sort of communication in common. And I think a lot of deaf people do find that there's this like sort of like mutual just like understanding when they're with another deaf person. But then on the flip side, so when you date a hearing person as a deaf person, you're sort of sharing both of your worlds in a way. So like you're sharing the deaf community with them and like introducing them to loads of like interesting new deaf stuff, and there's always sort of like a workaround between any differences you might have. So yeah, I think it's like it's quite balanced, like quite mixed.
Okay, I see. And how would you recommend supporting the deaf LGBT community? Are there any organizations?
Yeah, so firstly, there is an organisation. It's quite new. It's a deaf queer charity. It's called Deaf Rainbow UK, and they started up quite recently. I can't remember if it's last year or the year before. Like COVID just kind of like messed up my perception of time, but yeah, so they've started doing some really interesting work in the past year where they're sort of creating more content and really like reaching out to the deaf queer community and like trying to provide access for like deaf people who are coming out or deaf people who are like questioning their gender or might be considering transitioning and things like that. And also, what I think is good is if you try and sort of stay in touch with like deaf people on their Instagram and things like that. So we have like deaf queer people who have their own accounts, and so like if you're interested in like I don't know, maybe like learning sign language or like finding out more about the deaf community, it's always best to follow a genuine deaf queer person and just go straight to them.
Oh, cool. Okay, thank you. And what's next for you and what are you working on right now?
Okay, so in the UK we have something called the British Sign Language Broadcasting Trust, and that's basically a broadcasting trust that make content for British Sign Language users. And at the moment I'm helping them make a new TV comedy program. So
Okay.
been busy with that.
Okay,
No problem.
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, thank you for coming here and talking to us. Thank you. Bye.
Okay.